Hey guys, welcome to a summary of section 2 of Gorgias. This one will be really quick because the section is pretty short. So if you remember, we finished off on Callicles and his kind of criticism of Socrates. Well, we're going to go a bit further into that at the moment. And I think the first thing we need to say is that we're looking at a man who is developing his arguments based on life experience. No real philosophy or philosophical connections, but we may see when we do a more nuanced reading that he's arguing from the point of view of philosophy, or he's arguing from the point of view of developing arguments through logic. But the summary that I provide to you will probably show you that it's through reflection on his real world experience that he's developing his extended arguments or forms. All right. So our overall goal today is that we're going to explore a summary of section 2. Again, section 2 as stated in the textbook. So you can use either this video or the textbook as an access point. Our success criteria is pretty simple today. We only need 2 because we're going to recap on the differences between rhetoric and philosophy, and then we're going to further elaborate on arguments provided by Callicles. So I'd like you to go through these 2 success criteria and quickly score yourself. And then once you've done that, I would like you to have a look at this picture I've got of Mr. Trump and answer this question. Make a prediction for me. How might this image that you see relate to Callicles' future arguments or arguments that he's going to provide in the future? You'll have to excuse me, guys. It's the end of a party period for Year 9. They're celebrating the end of their semester, and they're behaving pretty well, but they might be a bit ruckus, and you'll hear them in the background. Cheers. Okay, I might add I'm not teaching them in my office. There are other teachers teaching the Year 9s at the moment, but of course they're having a good time and doing what Year 9s like to do when they're given a bit of freedom. Okay, so let's go to our little presentation, shall we? All right, here's the summary. It's going to be very quick. Now, if you remember, we have been outlining, or we have assumed that you know the difference between rhetoric and philosophy. And one of the classes that we had, we talked about the difference between rhetoric, which Socrates would argue is kind of a sham. That's kind of a big falsehood, and philosophy, which is a true practice, something that allows us to get to the truth. And of course, from Socrates' point of view, philosophy is much more powerful and much more important because it's about truth and knowledge than rhetoric, because it's about using knowledge and information to achieve power. And of course, Callicles, who's very worldly and very experienced, has a bit of a different point of view. In fact, he thinks rhetoric is actually really good because it allows you to do certain things that philosophy will never really allow you to do. And philosophy, well, it's a bit of a self-indulgent practice. That's basically what he thinks. In fact, he goes on to later argue that actually it's good when you're young. It can nurture that curiosity you have when you're young. But when you're middle-aged or a bit older, well, it's a bit useless because the actual practice of philosophy and what it requires you to do kind of denies or deprives you of the tools that you need to engage in social interaction and to work with other people. Whereas rhetoric, well, we could easily say rhetoric is good because it provides us with the tools, right? So that's pretty much one of his major arguments, and I think you really need to note take that. Go for it. Okay, and then he goes on to talk about the fact that the importance of being able to interact with society gives you really only benchmark or the only real hallmark of achievement you'll ever have in your life which is being able to distinguish yourself amongst others, amongst your peers. So just like we have this general receiving another badge, and in the process being distinguished from his other fellow soldiers, you know, that's what we should really aim to achieve in life, is to be positively commented on by our peers. And the only way we're going to do that is by using and employing rhetoric. He then goes on to say, look, reject philosophy because it's never going to get you here. And what you should do instead is go out, experience the world, employ rhetoric, work with it, and then come back and distinguish yourself. Only then can you achieve great things. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all he argues. And of course, someone's decided to open the door and walk through the class.